Hey humans, this is Tom Jacobs. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, energy worker channel. I'm on the web at tdjacobs.com. This presentation is the Black Moon Lilith, Reconnecting with Instinct. And this is today's April 18th, 2019, and I'm recording this for EA Zoom meetings. Thanks again for the opportunity to do this. So here we have Reconnecting with Instinct. First, some just basic ideas about the true Black Moon Lilith, and after this will be abbreviated BML. It's also called, its technical term is the osculating apogee. And on astro.com, in the additional bodies text box on the extended chart selection, you put H13 in there. If you use what is listed in the text box on the left with Chiron, Centaurs, asteroid goddesses, if you use that one, you're getting the mean position, which I don't recommend that you use. Now, this is a point, and I'll explain that why in a minute. This is a point. It's not a planet. It is a function of the moon's orbit around the Earth. Essentially, it is looking at, think about the moon's symbolism of feeling, emotion, right? Energy waves, sensing things, orbiting around the Earth, representing the physical body. So it's not a planet. It's not a thing that we can see and track its motion in the same way that we do any, Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, etc. So it's different, and this factors into my explanation about why it's important to use the true position. So the motion is highly erratic. It's changing all the time. It zigzags, that's my term, through adjacent signs for months at a time. I did a video on this a few months ago on the motion of the true Black Moon Lilith, or the oscillating apogee, and I recommend you check that out for a more thorough explanation, and also a visual where I use software to advance it and show it kind of zigzagging around the chart. But anyway, its motion is erratic. Now it'll take years to cycle through the zodiac, and what I want you to understand, the difference between the mean and the true BML. So like I said, I use the true position, but most people argue for the mean position, which is its averaged out motion. So when you look up on a website and they're talking about Lilith or Black Moon Lilith, and odds are the vast majority of sources you're going to find are using the mean position. It's readily available in software. It might even be the default if you choose Black Moon or Black Moon Lilith. And most people believe this is the Lilith to use. Now the reasoning, well, let me point out that it's up to 30 degrees different in any chart. Up to 30 degrees. It could be a degree or two. Mine's like 6 degrees or 5 degrees different, 5.5 degrees. But yeah, it could be up to 30 degrees different in any chart. Because again, it's taking this moving thing, this point, right, and trying to make it dependable through this averaging out its motion. Now the reasoning for people to prefer using the mean position is that the true Black Moon is too erratic, they say. But that entirely misses the nature of the Lilith archetype, which is changeable. Part of the Lilith thing is about instinct, which we're going to explore here in a minute. Instinct, and this instinctive, you can think of it as software that's preloaded in your root chakra within your own consciousness and your body when you're born. Instinctive wisdom. And it is changeable. It is, checking in with the environment and doing different things and needing to change. So this idea of the criticism, or this idea that it's erratic, it just represents a criticism toward the natural feminine that we're going to explore here, that it's too changeable, it's too erratic, we shouldn't count on it. We want control over it. We want, that's a kind of masculine mind perspective. So nature is not natural if it's smoothed out. So if you're using the mean position, you're essentially asking a Barbie doll what a woman is like. Or a blow-up doll even. A sex toy. What a woman is like. The true BML is actually alive and changeable. Okay. So elements of the Lilith archetype, let's cover that. Instinct, being instinctive, raw emotion, feeling these changes in our emotional states, and it can be very raw and very intense. Changing emotional states. Visceral knowing or wisdom, and that's what I said with this idea of the preloaded in your root chakra, you have the software, right? As if when you buy a computer, it's preloaded with an operating system. It's kind of what Lilith is, this lower chakra wisdom of the cycles of the natural world that's preloaded in us. We're taught to fear what can't be controlled and to try to shape it, right? To try to wrangle it and get it under control. But essentially, you're an animal who is a human. So yes, you have your mind, and yes, but if your mind is always in charge, right? If you only are up in your head, you will not be able to hear Lilith, and that's one of the things that's very prevalent in our world today. Now, exploring autonomy is another one. Now, what I really want to say is being autonomous. That's what I really want to say. Apparently, when I was writing this, I had some other idea in mind, but the basic idea is that I need to do what I need to do. You know, think about instinct and visceral knowing what's right for me, what isn't right for me. I need to do what I need to do. And yet we do need each other. We are in relationship, right? So autonomy and self-knowledge and self-respect are parts of it too. Now, intense relating with the self, nature, and others. So it's about relating. This thing about, I'm not going through the whole mythology and the archetype of Lilith today because I want to get to the signs and houses and really, and then give you some examples so you can kind of, you know, really understand how to work with it in the way that I do if you want to play with that and model it. But one of the things about the Lilith myth is that, you know, she's this difficult woman who leaves Adam, and Adam's all lonely, so God has to create Eve to placate him. And she's bad. She's the mother of all demons. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this idea of like intense relating, visceral, primal, like raw emotion, instinctive, you know, physical, lower chakra. If you're familiar with the chakra system, you know that the lower ones are typically considered more rough or kind of denser. And when you go in the upper chakras, well, then you access spiritual planes and meditate on goodness and whatever. I recommend you go down first and then you move up so you can have a balanced column of consciousness. But anyway, it's about intense relating. And so in the mythology of Lilith, it looks like she is difficult. She's a demon, etc. And she's off on her own. She leaves Adam. But the whole thing is about intense connection, each person being autonomous and self-responsible, so no one's controlling the other. That's really kind of the key to the whole myth. All right, now why Lilith is labeled a demon? If you choose to honor your instinctive autonomous self, you're choosing not to be controlled. Like if you choose to listen to your body, you can't be controlled. If you choose to listen to your endocrine system, your chemistry, your hormones, you know, the whole pheromone hormone system, if you choose to listen to that, right? If somebody's like, oh, you're feeling sick, I want to give you this shot, and you're like, my body doesn't want that shot, then you're difficult, right? But if you choose, then so to get as many people under the safety net of the bell curve as possible, you know, we have labeled Lilith as demonic, a person who has who goes his or her own way, right? Who makes his or her own decisions, who isn't controlled, isn't controllable. Now, to survive, the patriarchal culture religion machine needs you to do certain things. And you might say, oh, Tom is such a conspiracy theorist. But think about how we are living in a patriarchal system. And there are certain reasons for it, which I'm going to explain a little about in a moment. But understand that we are coming out of this 6,000-year process. And if you don't believe me, look at the uprising, which is the Me Too movement. This is like coming out of a structure, trying to break free of an old structure, trying to heal and get rid of things and come into a more just and balanced way of being, right? And seeking justice for the imbalance and inequality. But anyway, to survive, this cultural machine needs you to second guess yourself, deny your instinct, and be compliant. If a bunch of people, if everybody were trusting themselves unique individuals, we couldn't live together in the same way. We couldn't coalesce into societies and communities in the same way. So now that we've done that, and we've denied instinct, now we're having these opportunities to wake up and honor Lilith within us. But anyway, this is why she is labeled a demon. Now, the natural feminine within any person functions with nature as an extension of nature. And nature changes, therefore we sometimes might label it erratic. Like some people want it to be sunny every day. I'm so happy when it changes. I'm so happy when, like, yesterday and today it's sunny here in Oregon and where I am, and like maybe tomorrow maybe it's gonna rain and drop 30 degrees in temperature or 20 degrees. Like I'm so happy about that because the change is natural. I spent 9 years living in Arizona where there wasn't a lot of change, and before that 6 years living in Los Angeles where there wasn't a lot of change. And leaving those kinds of desert climates, like, it was really, things need to change. That's normal. Okay, sorry, it's my little Dear Diary about where I've lived. But what cannot be controlled needs to be demonized, dominated, or eradicated. So there's the idea. We consider Lilith a demon because it can't be controlled, and then nature itself, everything that's feminine, including nature. Humans who connect to the earth in positive ways threaten the status quo. That's a simple way to say it. If you honor the earth, then you're one of those pesky environmentalists who holds up the construction project, which means progress, these new condos by the waterfront. And you're worried about the turtle habitat? Here we go. Patriarchy versus Lilith. Okay. Now, I encourage a radical acceptance of the natural feminine within us, and it means listening to your body. It starts with listening to your body, honoring the natural flow of your emotions, aligning and embodying with your convictions, which will create self-respect and autonomy, and negotiating, but without compromising in a self-effacing, negatively submissive way. So there's no power over power under. There's no domination games. There's no control dynamics playing out. Negotiating, hey, what can we do together? Let's talk. Let's have a convo. Because if you listen to the myth as it's told to us, then Lilith is an outcast. And a lot of people I work with who identify with Lilith energy perceive there's no place for them in the world, like in society. They'd have to be on the fringes or something. And this has to change. Okay, now telling the truth even when it's unpopular. Because for you to be aligned with your convictions means you're aligned with what's true for you. Tell the truth, even if others don't like it. You're challenging the status quo? Great, maybe the status quo needs to be challenged. And also being willing to upgrade relationships that don't work, including those with imbalanced power dynamics. I alluded to this with the idea of negotiation and compromise, but being willing to upgrade or end relationships through dialogue. And if you find out that, like the thing again, I'm not going into the whole Lilith myth in this presentation, but the thing is that it's said in this story coming from the Jewish tradition. This is not in the Bible, the Torah, but this is in the Midrashic texts and commentary on them later. Like this whole thread of commentary over many, many generations on biblical themes and stories, and that come from the Jewish tradition. And the story goes that after Adam named all the animals, which is in Genesis, then Adam realized everybody else had someone to play with because God had created Adam, male and female together. So Adam says, I'm lonely, I need someone to play with. I tried copulating with all these beings and none of them is my natural mate. God says, well, of course, I made you male and female together. Let me split you. There's Adam and Lilith. And in their lovemaking, the story goes, Adam says, I'm better, I'm going to be on top. And Lilith says, we're actually equals, created from the same stuff at the same time. And he says, no, I'm better. I'm made of earth, you're made of sediment. That's dirtier. So anyway, she leaves him because he's dominant. He's trying to dominate her and tell her who she is and control her. The whole thing with Eve is that Eve is an afterthought. Once Lilith wouldn't come back, she left him, the only man on earth, she leaves him. God is like whining, Adam is whining to God, I'm lonely, she won't come back. I don't have anyone to play with. And so God creates Eve out of a part of Adam to make sure that she knows she should never assert equality. So again, like she's derivative. Eve is derivative. And Eve is the model of the nice girl, the nice woman. Okay, anyway. And also radical acceptance of this feminine includes ceasing cycles of abuse and domination and control by embracing inner strength. And this is about learning to say yes and no when you mean it. Giving yourself permission to say yes when you want something and no when you don't. without apology. Not apologizing for what you want, not apologizing for what you don't want. This is about medical care, wellness approaches, like treating your body as a collective of independent systems that all affect each other. It's about nourishing your body in conscious ways. So it's about food. Choosing food instinctively is a part of it. Letting your body tell you through chemistry, through smell, what works. Not just not just a mouth feel, like macaroni and cheese feels good in my mouth, or things that are buttery feel good, or whatever, like chips, like seem to make me satisfied. Like not that kind of thing that your brain and your tongue are engaged in. Not having distraction by having something crunchy, so you're eating chips all the time, exacerbating your TMJ, whatever. But like choosing food instinctively with your whole body, and also being open to change and flowing with circumstance while knowing who you are and being in integrity. So my idea of the radical acceptance of the natural feminine includes you as an individual learning to trust your body and your emotions and investing in them in healthy ways. And it's about sex. When, why, how often, how, who, with whom, when, why, where, all these things, if it, all these things, if it works for you. Learning to say again, yes and no, and allowing the natural ebbs and tides of flows of sexual energy, interest, passion, and desire, not forcing anything. Recognizing sex as a doorway to opening you and you with others to divine self. This is Lilith. All right, now healing some Lilith issues includes unapologetically honoring the self, right? Recognizing that we live in a world full of people trained to fear the feminine while diminishing the packaged feminine, trained to fear the natural feminine while diminishing the packaged feminine. I think about this all the time. When I'm in someone's house and they have a dog who's just waiting to be told it's good. Like, a dog, like you go to a friend's house and a dog is sitting on the floor watching you, like, tell me I'm good. Will you validate me? I think about that, having this animal live in your house, but it's totally dependent upon you for its self-esteem. Packaged feminine. Okay, forgiving histories of mistreatment and being made wrong for having a voice or being independent or autonomous, meaning imbalance, abuse, control issues, being shamed. I haven't used that word yet, but we're going to talk about it with Lilith as we go. Now let's focus for a moment on sex. For 6,000 years in this patriarchal tradition, we've been trained to see men as worthy of dominating women. And you're like, oh, Tom Jacobs, it's 2019 and we're done with that. And look at the prevalence of the Me Too movement and all these. Yes, but that is, again, the eruption of the tension that's been building for thousands of years about the imbalance and the dominance issues. So we elevated the masculine in order to get some things done, because being surrendered to our Earth Mother, which is what we were doing before, and this story is told a little bit in Lilith Healing the Wild, the book, but also the channeled book, Goddess Past, Present, and Future. I recommend getting them both, actually, to tell the full story. The Lilith includes the astrology, the other one doesn't. It's more of a direct, undistilled channeled view. Anyway, elevating the masculine is like to try to protect ourselves, to try to build a world where the whims of nature can't get to us. This is why patriarchy exists. Now, patriarchal history favors male sexual mores and models of sexual ethos, directing, controlling, shaping. When I say male, I'm not talking about men who have, or physically men. I'm talking about those who tend toward being directing others and shaping things and controlling things. Because we all have each energy within us, accepting, receiving, feminine, and directing, exerting, masculine. We both have all of us have both of those energies. So if the masculine seems worth elevating in order to get things done and protect ourselves from the whims of nature, right, then it may appear as if the feminine is worth diminishing. And that's what we're trying to heal from. Look, we've gotten a lot of stuff done, but we can no longer get away with diminishing half of who we are, half the population and half of every being. So we're dealing with, or reeling from this, diminishment of the feminine in all its forms. Women, the earth, the natural wild, and all things that unfold as they want to. Let me say cannot be controlled. Let me change that. All things that unfold organically. Oh, yeah, just a note on like the prevalence of wildfires in the West and the US. You know, we've controlled ourselves, we've directed and inserted ourselves into nature to the point that we freak out, of course, when fires occur and when people pass away. But fire is natural part of the life of the forest, the life of the earth. Okay, now many are healing and releasing these knots and blocks and bruises from enforced marriage-defining sex imprinted on them and their energy and emotional fields. We're healing from this domination thing, right? And at times in human history, sex has been used as a control mechanism by this culture religion machine to ensure that a man can know who his children are, which is the central tenet of patriarchy. That's what it's about. So in order to make sure that happens, you got to make sure this woman can't be with multiple men. So let's control her sexuality. Let's devise this marriage idea and this till death do us part, and like I own you and you own me. That's where this comes from. So reconnecting with and honoring Lilith in this context means knowing both the masculine and feminine within us, regardless of gender or even sexual orientation, regardless of all those things. And instinctive sex is natural sex. It has no rules, no expectations. It honors each person and allows each to explore self and other. Healthy Lilith isn't about conquest or scoring. And all of you know this. But as a cultural thing, we're just starting to have dialogues about this over the last few decades. All right, now the house. Let's get into the astrology of this. I just wanted to do that overview for you and then get into a little bit of stuff about sexuality. Because it's a huge deal in our world. And if you think about Lilith as a demon, well, are you going to be inclined to listen to your body? Because everyone else thinks she's a demon too. No, you're not. Okay, so the house of the true black moon in any chart describes in what parts of life Lilith's instinct and autonomy need to be expressed. The parts of life in which the chart holder may have been made wrong for not being controlled or controllable, or being made wrong for being autonomous, being made wrong for honoring instinct, for being that unique individual who says, no, I actually can't eat meat anymore, or I have to eat meat now. You know, kind of listening to the body in ways that might remove one from feeling accepted in a social circle or a family, like these kinds of changes. Parts of life in which the person might have been conditioned to be compliant in unhappy ways, and I just put control, punishment, sanction, abuse, threats. You know, if you don't do this for me, if you don't behave this way, like, you know, that kind of coercion, all those kinds of things are negative responses, you know, to the reality that a person wants to be autonomous. Okay, now first house, let's just give some keywords: body, personality, self-interested decisions, self-assertive action, putting the self first, independence, those kinds of things. So the true black moon in the first house, let me just make one note actually before we get into this. Remember at the top of the presentation when I said the mean position and the true position can differ up to 30 degrees. Like I said, it may be 1, 2, 6, 10, or up to 30. Just be aware that if you are accustomed to looking at Lilith in your chart and you're like, oh yeah, my Lilith is in the first, but then, you know, we're in the 12th, right? And then you go to say, well, where is H13, the oscillating apogee? Like, where is that? This Tom Jacobs person on YouTube was telling me to do this. And you put it in there and it's in the first house, it's going to change your interpretation. I just want you to be aware of, like, to be open to that. And as far as like the mean and the true together, people write me sometimes or comment on my videos on YouTube and say, I use both, I find them useful. And I just don't, and I don't care. Like, God bless everybody. If you find it useful, great. For me, it's like, if I have a woman to talk to in front of me, or I have a blow-up doll with her fucking mouth and the whole, you know, what do I want? I want to talk to the human. So I don't use both. I don't find them useful. Somebody also wrote to me that they were learning something from somebody and said that the path between them is a quarter or something. Doesn't make any sense to me. So if you write me and say, interpret that, I won't. It doesn't make any sense to me. I use the true black moon and that's it. All right, now, in the first house, these people embody the energy of Lilith. If it's the true black moon, the oscillating apogee. They are seen to be Lilith figures even when they don't want to or don't mean to. Any planet or point you have in the first house is something you're giving off unintentionally. So you're seen to be a Lilith figure even if you don't want to be. You walk into the room and Lilith is there. Even if you don't say anything and you're not difficult and you don't go against the grain or go against the status quo and you're you're nice and pleasant, the energy of Lilith is now in the air. So the person may be seen as Lilith, okay. And that person needs to unapologetically honor who he or she is, who they are. You can't go with the status quo, so you're going to feel different. And in standing out, why is Fred always so difficult? You know, why is Michelle always so difficult? You know, it happens with men and women. It's not just women, though, of course, for obvious reasons, we may assume it is. You know, why is this person so different? Well, this person needs to be autonomous and independent. That's an answer. That person needs to listen to the body and trust instinct and his or her own endocrine system and function independently. Okay, second house, everything related to survival, resources, skills, self-worth, possessions, money. I also think of it strongly in terms of value system. What really matters to me will determine what resources and skills I gather, you know, my values, how I want to live. So in this house, instinct needs to inform choices about where time, energy, and money go. These three things as resources. Your attention, what you put energy into, this is, you know, you might say I've wasted so much time on this project, or I've invested, you know, so much energy into this thing. These are resources. So you need to be autonomous if you have Lilith, True Black Moon Lilith in the second house. No matter what others say or expect, you need to choose instinctively, even if it looks impulsive, you need to choose how you use your time, energy, money, and resources. Now, shaming from others can arise through expressing one's value system. And those values need to reflect the kind of knowing, pre-verbal, pre-rational, found in the lower chakras. So what do you need to do for yourself today? I think you should do this. And the person with Lilith in the second house has a very clear visceral response. I can't do that. That's your idea. I have to do what I have to do. So it's not just independence, but it is about self-reliance. So it has this kind of independence flavor to it sometimes. But focus on how to use time, energy, money, possessions. What is worth owning? Your visceral, instinctive self will tell you. Okay. Third house, information in and out, curiosity, local places, communication of all kinds, schools, right? Schooling, education. So Lilith in the third house, instinct needs to direct the mind and also curiosity. How the mind works and what is communicated needs to be allowed to work in their own way, even if erratic, even if changeable. You know, allowing that to flow and be flexible is really important. But also the person may be interested in Lilith themes, interested in the natural world, interested in, you know, power differentials in relationships and finding justice for people. That, you know, it's possible here. Now, shaming can arise through the person asking questions. Oops, I thought there was another one. So the thing is, like, you're disturbing the status quo by what you're learning and what you're saying and writing. So shaming from others to try to get you to conform may come through those things. Right, fourth house, inner world, home, like your inner psychological, emotional foundation, family, heritage and ancestry, the people and places you come from, personal and cultural foundation. So Lilith in the fourth house, Lilith's themes are present in the family of origin. So someone in the family is very Lilith, whether they like it or not, whether others like it or not. It could be the chart holder, but often it's an ancestor or relative in the immediate family who's modeling something, right, for the person. Shaming can arise through what the person feels or needs or expresses, like, I need this support, I need you to do this with me, or hey, can you help me do this? Shaming can arise through expressing needs and feelings. Now, instinct needs to guide self-exploration. So other people might say, oh, you're going to do this self-help thing? Oh, hey, here's this program. I bought this book and it's got this really cool advice and it's a cool process and every day you do this thing or whatever and it's awesome and you should do it. And the Lilith in the fourth house person needs to find out from within, what is the appropriate process for me to process this feeling or emotion? Self-help books are never going to do it for Lilith. Well, for most Lilith people, but Lilith in the fourth, definitely. What do I need? I need to figure that out myself. So let me be quiet, let me fast, let me go on a juice cleanse, let me do the master cleanse, let me let things settle in my body, let me listen to my body to tell me how I'm doing with my emotions. That's a Lilith, true black moon Lilith in the 4th house kind of thing. Excuse me. Now there's a great depth of feeling here, but also perhaps more than other placements, maybe more than other placements, great swings of mood and emotion. Because the physical body and the emotions and the energy, and they're all swirling, they're all changing all the time. I always recommend to get grounded, to send cords into the earth, to be willing to be in our bodies, and even use programmed crystals, lower chakra stuff, hematite, tiger iron, whatever, onyx. I recommend those kinds of things so we can stabilize ourselves, so that when our emotions do wax and wane or ebb and flow, we can be more prepared for it. 5th house, it's about creativity, play, self-expression, shining as a unique individual, spontaneity, fun. Lilith themes here will come out in opinions, sexuality, and creativity. The little kid who's drawing the scene, like I can imagine like a bunch of 4th graders and the teacher's modeling a winter scene, and like here's a tree and a snowman and a house with the smoke coming out of the chimney, and there's decorations in the window. It's a winter scene. There's like all this, all the snow and the hill. And the kid with a strong Lilith in the 5th house will draw like a bear eating a fish in the scene, or like a pack of wolves looking at the something about the natural world pulled into art and creativity. Anyway, but also in opinions, they may be erratic and changeable. They may be really clearly autonomous, right? Shaming can arise through shining, through having an opinion and expressing uniquely, and also through playfulness and sexuality. The sexuality of the 5th house, I always try to note for the record, is playful, improv, attraction, attractiveness. The 8th house sexuality is that bondedness that runs deep, and we, tie our wagons together, so to speak. But the 5th house does include sexuality as pleasure seeking and learning about each other, in a playful way and in an expressive way. Okay, now instinct needs to guide self-expression. So what is worth drawing? What opinions are worth having? What unique contribution is worth giving to the world? Instinct needs to guide that. Now, the wild, natural, raw sense of playfulness that can take one and others to the edge, meaning in play, there may be an edge where somebody else is like, whoa, what happened? Because intensity, Lilith's intensity can be there. So it can actually surprise the chart holder as well as other people. The raw intensity of Lilith coming out through this playful house of flirting and sexuality and creativity. All right, 6th house, life arenas in which we learn humility or feel humiliated. Power, overpower, under dynamics, or in a certain way regarding power imbalance or differential. Service, duty, obligation, responsibility. It's about learning to be a good team player and learning to sacrifice egoic concerns in order to be useful and helpful. All the parts of life that have to do with that are service-oriented. So shaming can arise through inequality or power dynamics between people, where somebody's like holding something over somebody else's head. Instinct needs to guide to what one submits and to what one takes on as a responsibility. Instinct needs to guide that. Somebody goes, I have this great job opportunity for you. And you're like, close to home, good money, boring drudgery. I'm imagining it, and my body is shutting down, and my heart just became a poof of dust and floated away in the wind. So that kind of thing about you can't get stuck in too much drudgery because you need change, and regarding how things go. The thing about the 6th house is also everything about daily routine, and so Lilith's instinct will also tell you, nope, not the right time to exercise. Nope, not the right time to eat. We'll tell you that on a regular basis if you're willing to listen. 6th house also, suppressed anger is possible when not treated as an equal or feeling dominated. Suppressed anger is a thing about Lilith in general. I'm not weaving it into every explanation to save space, but in the slides, but the idea of having been shamed or punished or something sanctioned and edited and controlled, we get angry about that. And if somebody denies your experience because it's too messy for them to deal with, like again with Me Too stuff, where people someone says this happened, I was violated, it's wrong, And the person who's being confronted is like, you know, what's a little off is flirting. You know, somebody trying to basically gaslight you so they don't have to deal with your anger or in the injustice that they participated in. You know, any Lilith can have that kind of anger. And that's another reason why Lilith is considered a demon or labeled a demon, because it's easy to vilify that uncontrollable rage, then acknowledge the truth that pain is behind it, and people are really hurt through being denied and controlled and manipulated and abused and dominated. So anger is possible with any of these Lilith placements, but in this case, feeling like something lorded over you or you have to stay subservient or something like that, that can be hard. Seventh house, in general, life arenas involving meeting the other, one-on-one relationships, right? Knowing the self through reflections from others, negotiation, compromise, selling things. I always forget to include that, but I remembered for this presentation. The idea of like, let me listen to what you need. Oh yeah, I can figure out what you need. Let me help you figure that out. I can sell, you know, that's a good selling technique. It's a sales technique, is good seventh house listening. Anyway, other people are needed to activate the person's Lilith. So her themes are present in every relationship for the seventh house Lilith person. What this means is that, and there's no defect in a person that this is true, but any planet you have in the seventh house, you're not going to lead with automatically, because you see it in others. You don't own it. It seems like what others do. So you need others to bring it out of you. So with Lilith in the seventh house, a person might attract a bunch of negative Lilith stuff, including control dynamics or abuse, to get that person to stand up and be autonomous and say, enough, stop it. No when I mean no, yes when I mean yes. You know, anyway, so in all relationships with this chart holder with Lilith in the seventh, Lilith will be there. And it could be drawing Lilith people who are very healthy. It could be unhealthy. It could be people who are trying to dominate Lilith. It could be people who are trying to pull Lilith out of you, like, oh, you should be autonomous, make your own decisions, and oh, look how in your body you are, how great that is. And the chart holder was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Like reflecting Lilith that it exists to the chart holder. Now, shaming can arise through feeling controlled by others who should be equals, or the chart holder approaches as equals and finds out, no, actually, this person is trying to control me. So shaming can arise through, why are you always making your own decisions? When I want to have sex with you, why are you always saying no? Like, I want things from you. You know, being shamed through not being controlled, right? And other people telling you, you should be controlled. Okay. Now, the need is to choose people based on instinct. Just like I said in the sixth house, to choose a daily routine based on instinct, to choose what vitamins, you know, what macronutrients are important right now versus 10 hours from now or tomorrow. Same thing here. What relationships should I have? Let me choose them based on instinct. Let me check in with my chemistry, my endocrine system, my root chakra knowing. Does my body and my heart and even my lower part of my body open around somebody, or does it close? Eighth house issues include intimacy, trust, vulnerability, deep bonding, sharing resources. So that's where the money thing comes in, shared money or other people's money, and relying on others, counting on others, depending on others. So deep instinct of Lilith meets deep trust and deep sexuality, deep vulnerability, right? Shaming can arise through natural sexuality. In the eighth house, we get triggered by other people naturally as soon as we trust them or let our guard down. Actually, you know, when I say let our guard down, that implies, maybe just in my mind, but it seems to imply, well, I should never let my guard down. Like I should have my guard up because guard is helpful, right? When I choose to be vulnerable, when I trust you, when I open to you, I tell you a secret or something, vulnerability occurs. And Lilith stuff will get triggered then. So the potential here is for a lot of reactivity and a lot of, you know, feeling hurt even when somebody didn't mean it, and then anger in response. It's possible. Instinct needs to guide choices regarding who is opened to, but also healing when things don't go well or don't end well. A secret in the eighth house is that all things can be healed. Think about the phoenix rising from the ashes. What a great, noble story. A noble bird, this mythological creature. But what we don't talk about, because we don't know how to deal with it, is that getting burned alive sucks. Okay, so everything can be healed, right? So the instinctive side of what do I need to heal this betrayal, the end of this relationship that was painful, this abuse issue, how do I heal? Instinctive need, you know. And the 8th house is also the terrain of psychology and deep understanding of the human condition. You know, digging under the surface, belunking in one's inner sanctum. And so Lilith can help you, you know, can help the person with it in the 8th house to figure out how to heal things too. Okay. And there's a need here to dig deep to find the source of interpersonal power dynamics. So if two people are healthy in a relationship and one has like Lilith in the 8th or both, you know, there's a need to take responsibility for one's own stuff and understand, oh yeah, you affect me this way and I seem to affect you. And when you do this, I seem to respond this way. That kind of like, not necessarily always clinical, but that kind of rational understanding of like, I'm affecting you. You're affecting me. There's a need to dig deep to really find the source of these things. Because the reason I'm reacting to you is because of my own garbage. But I might blame you, and that's a negative 8th house kind of thing. I might blame you for making me feel a certain way, for harming me, for hurting me or something. I can even think about relationships I've had where, you know, somebody's abuse from childhood gets triggered. The person's angry at me. Okay. 9th house, worldview, philosophy, seeking truth, belief, religion, imagination, intuition. The idea is everyone's guided by belief. Most of us don't know it, but in the 9th house, they're the parts of life that are organized around belief. So having a worldview is a basic idea here. Shaming can arise through exploring instinct-based belief systems or eschewing traditional ideas. Like everyone's like imagine if you have Lilith in the 9th house, somebody came to you and said, dude, you will never guess what I just heard about. This guy, he died, and they buried him, and 3 days later, he came back to life. Can you believe this? And like, he's God. If you have Lilith in the 9th house, you'll feel in your body if it feels true to you or not. You won't be able to attach yourself to everyone's mythologies, and religions are mythologies. They're ways of interpreting, they're ways of developing stories to interpret what is presumed to be God's will. And I would say mythology is a 9th house exploration as well. It's a higher education, imaginative, intuitive, archetypal realm. So anyway, you won't be able to buy into mythologies, you know, that don't make sense viscerally, that don't make, you know, where you're just supposed to believe something because someone's telling you should believe it. Oh, did you know that if you're not saved, you're gonna risk, you know, going to hell or just floating around in this terrible place forever? Oh my God, I don't want to be, you know, like just doing things because you're told that, you know, what? This is a mythology. Okay. So instinct needs to guide the framework through which one sees the world. Evaluate things based on how your body responds, how your chemistry responds. Evaluate ideas. Okay. And there's a need here to go one's own way regarding belief. Think about Lilith, wherever she is in the chart, there's a need to go one's own way. Again, with the 2nd house, I need to use my time my own way. 3rd house, I need to learn what I need to learn. 4th house, I need to deal with my emotions the way I need to. There's that autonomous thing that's really important here, to go one's own way. 10th house, it's about all the parts of life that include status, respect, ambition, having an effect on the world or community and how others see you from afar, and becoming a symbol for something. True Black Moon Lilith, the oscillating apogee in the 10th house, somebody will be a symbol of Lilith, a symbol of either honoring or denying instinct for others. I just had to pause it because my Lilith in the 2nd house of tools and resources sensed that the battery in the headset was running low. Honestly, I got an intuitive fit that I needed to check it. I took it, the red light was on. Okay. So becoming a symbol for something. People see you from afar. They don't know you, but you're a symbol for them. There we go. A person at work or in the community may become a symbol of Lilith themes. Again, control issues, freedom, being wild, being uncontrollable, being autonomous, any of these things. You know, inhabiting a healthy sexuality. Some people with Lilith in the 10th are seen as, you know, more sexually available than they are because they carry this raw, visceral, primal thing, and it seems to stand out to other people. Shaming can come through being labeled as difficult, offensive, or a troublemaker at work or in the community or anywhere in public. Like somebody with this signature might, you know, buy a product and then take it back to a store because it turned out to not do what it promised. And at the customer service counter, the person says, "Oh, I was in here Tuesday and I bought this product and it's not what it said it was, and I just want to return it, and here's my receipt." Now that's a very reasonable thing, but the person behind the counter may be affected by this Lilith energy standing in front of him or her. And anyway, there can be conflict because a person may be treated as difficult even when he's just returning this doohickey or this widget. So becoming a symbol of something, right? And so if you stand out as a Lilith person, you might be shamed for being difficult. Because remember, going against the status quo naturally results if you trust yourself, if you choose autonomy and self-respect. Self-respect enough to trust yourself and be autonomous. Let me rephrase that. Now, instinct must inform efforts to serve. Now, I say serve, and most people assume it's really about work and job and career. But my thing about the 10th house is that we want to see something in the world, and we become the kind of person who can offer it, and then we may choose to do that. So I think it's a house of public service or bringing something to the world, not trying to paint this picture of altruism that would negate the value of earning a living, because we do get paid for things that we do. But what do I want to see more of in the world? I think of that as service. So what place do I want in my community? What makes sense? What can I offer? Lilith instinctive self needs to choose this, needs to inform this. 11th house, goals. What do I want my future to look like? Or what I want the future of my community to be like? Creating a future with others, networking, groups, friends. To think of it as groups, friends, wishes, hopes, dreams, I think is very limiting. So I focus first on goals. What do I want my future to look like? What do I want for my life? Lilith in the 11th will be a Lilith figure within groups. Given all I've talked about today, the person who's labeled difficult but is just earnestly being there, you know, just showing up, maybe being made a black sheep or a scapegoat within a group, it could happen, but also could be relied upon for fresh original ideas and to see things outside the box, you know, not to get too stuck in the status quo. Shaming can arise through standing out as Lilith within groups. You think about Lilith as this whole, a healthy Lilith as this kind of whole body awareness. Unhealthy Lilith would be shamed or in a cupboard or compartmentalized so that the brain's always in charge. And you think about some, you know, the direction of a group shifting toward what a brain would choose, but what a body would reject, what a sense of, you know, connectedness to humanity and nature. You know, think about those kinds of things. And so a Lilith person might attempt to be the conscience in a group. Hey, let's think about how this affects the world or the planet. And other people might say, you're really slowing down my condo development at the water side, at the seashore. Okay. My vision of the future involves these condos. Your vision of the future is this turtle habitat. Ridiculous. That whole thing comes up. Instinct in such a person needs to direct the formation of goals and choices about who to work with to achieve those goals. One of the truths about the 11th house is that you can't create the future you want to live in by yourself. So that's where we get groups, friends, networking, clubs. 12th house, situations in which we find ourselves feeling connected to or struggling against the fabric of the universe. I wrote that a long time ago, actually. 12th house is where we find ourselves needing to surrender to a higher truth, or surrender ego can feel like sacrificing ego, but it's really more about learning to align ourselves with a greater purpose. And so we find ourselves sometimes against things we can't control, and things are too big to deal with. We may feel steamrolled or blocked, or some giant hand is controlling things or something like that. So shaming can arise through methods of seeking extra human connection, escapism, addiction, even like Let's say a person comes from a family, and I'm not being facetious here, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. Let's say a person comes from a family of drinkers, and that person goes, that's not going to work for me. Maybe I need to try meditation. And everyone else in the family makes fun of the person because the norm in the family, right? So 12th house is like, how can I find my connection to the divine? Lilith, like this, drinking doesn't feel good. Maybe the meditation doesn't feel good, but like Pilates feels great. What does the body tell you? And Lilith in the 12th house, need to find your spiritual connection that way. But also connection to the world. Lilith in the 12th, maybe one of those positions where somebody derives such a comfort from being in nature, and I know who I am, I can think straight when I'm outside. That's Lilith in the 12th potentially. A direct connection with the natural world improves the relationship with instinct. Like after I listened to that frog croak for 10 minutes the other day, something was different. And I felt better. That's Lilith in the 12th, feeling more connected. True Black Moon Lilith in the signs. Now, a sign would be a way of being, a method, a mode of being. Remember, houses, they're not the same. A house is parts of life or arenas of life, what is happening, right? A sign is how it's happening and why it's happening. So the way of being that the person needs to explore and allow in order to find and connect with this instinctive lower chakra wisdom. It's a way of being and a motivation within the person that may have been shamed or controlled or something like that. And it's a way of being the person might shy away from in order to avoid punishment if that's been part of the person's path or past. Aries, some keywords: unmediated response, bold action, independent action. It's a sign of embodied instinct. Lilith here, instinct-based action needs to be allowed, yet might be the reason for being labeled in a negative light. Think about that person who turns on a dime in a self-interested way within a group, and everyone's like, why is Fred so difficult? It's possible because this person responds quickly with instinct, regardless of what's happening around, right? Because there's that self-interested instinctive thing that needs to be honored. Now, reactivity to being shamed or controlled can be intense because remember, a planet working through the lens of Aries might also be defensive, might have a fire behind it, a righteous anger, or just outright rage, so that there can be a lot of reactivity to being shamed or controlled. And if Lilith is not honored, conflict can seem to follow the person around. Why am I always getting a backlash here? Well, because you're not instinctively honoring what you need to choose for yourself. You're not being self-interested. So somehow you're open to this criticism because you're afraid to be self-interested. So the energetics are messed up. Taurus, the method of slowing down to focus on what's important, as well as simplifying and trimming things, consolidating, condensing. It's a sign of practical control and intentionality to ensure outcomes. Lilith here is earthy and deeply embodied when healthy, inspiring sensuality. We use that word, think about sexuality, but I really want to say sensuality as an embodied experience of the environment, of fabrics, of flavors, of products, of textures, of vehicles, like the feeling in the body. Lilith and Taurus needs to slow down and edit how much physical stuff is experienced. So somebody with Lilith and Taurus who's really listening to the body might eat mono meals, right? What am I eating right now? What are you having for dinner? I'm having broccoli. That's it. That's all my body wants. It wouldn't make sense to other people. But the trimming, focusing, kind of simplifying thing, the body needs what broccoli has. A few days later, it's leeks. A few days later, it's some chicken. May not be a lot of ingredients, is what I'm getting at. Or actual literal mono meals. Instinct needs to guide the kind of activity and the speed and the rate. Planet or point in Taurus needs to operate on its own timeline, typically slower than what others expect. So instinct needs to choose how fast you eat. I actually have my True Black Moon Lilith in the second house. There's a little overlap. And my mom used to call me the long distance eater. And we'd sit down and say, I'm talking like I'm 4 years old, 5, 6 years old. And all three of us would be sitting there, my sister and my mom, and whatever, they eat and move on with their lives. My sister helps them out with the dishes. I'm 5 years old. I'm still sitting there because I'm playing with the textures. I'm organizing the mashed potatoes and the peas in a certain way. I'm being creative. I'm being artistic, but I'm also like feeling the textures, and I'm really like having this sensuous experience. That's Lilith. That's listening to the body. So the speed. So I would be sitting there, and she'd be like turning off the lights in the kitchen, and I'm finishing the last 2 peas one by one. So it's, you know, it's the speed is very important for this with Taurus. Okay, now Gemini, it's a sign of opening up to newness. It's about being amazed, new ideas, quickness, communication, being communicative. It's a sign of gathering and researching what's out there and what might be possible. These brainstorming, generating ideas, and research and data. So with Lilith and Gemini, quick changes in direction need to be allowed as Lilith recalibrates based on experience in the moment. Now that we're here, I don't want to go to the movie. I want to go over there and look at the books in that store. And everyone else is like, we just drove half an hour to come see this movie. So that kind of thing, like, you know, curiosity, being distracted by shiny things. Instinct needs to allow what attention, you know, what is attention is given here. Conflict and control may result from others' perceptions of the person's instability. Like that example, we just drove a half an hour to go see this movie that's playing in one theater, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go look at these books. And the other people may have this image of the person like, she just, what is her problem? She can't make a decision and stick to it. The person's perceptions of the person's instability. So conflict, control, shaming might result that way. In the sign of Cancer, it's the mode of feeling, sensing, processing emotions, working through the lens of the heart. It's a sign of nesting, creating comfort, stability, and dealing with emotions and feeling. Changing emotional states versus mood swings. Just be aware that with Lilith and Cancer, this is important to understand. It looks like mood swings or maybe criticized and shamed for mood swings. Changing emotional states is natural and normal, but exacerbated with Lilith and Cancer. Conflict and control here for this chart holder may result from others' perceptions of the person's taking things too personally or overemphasizing the chart holder's needs. Like, I need this, I need that, and everyone else is like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? It might seem like whining to the people, but Lilith needs expression. Leo, it's the mode of the zodiac about playing, shining, performing, opining, interpreting things as they relate to the self. So another sign of taking things personally, and a sign of feeling special and finding out what can be celebrated, right? How can I like myself in that way? How can I enjoy being me? So conflict and control may result from perceiving that others are not interested in what he or she has to say. Lilith here needs room to perform the sense of instinct. Perform instinctively, perform what is learned and felt instinctively, needs space. Virgo, the mode of the zodiac about helping, serving, healing, improving, analyzing, categorizing, discerning, is the sign of making something better, fixing things, improving things. Lilith here needs room to get specific because it's also a sign of being analytical. Conflict and control may surround service, humility, and feeling taken advantage of through duty and service and helping. Instinct needs to guide what the person considers worth analyzing and improving and therefore taking on as a responsibility. Libra, relating to others, building bridges, giving and receiving reflection, like I see you, you see me, creating harmony and equality. It's a sign of learning balance. It does not know balance. It is trying to learn it. So Lilith here needs to take reflection from others, but not always literally. Like if everyone says, you're impossible, you're impossible, you're impossible, you're so difficult, you're too hard to love. I don't know, something like that. Take reflection that they're telling you something about you, but maybe don't take it literally. You're not too hard to love, you're unique. So Libra, with Lilith there, needs to instinctively interpret things, how others see the person and what information is reflected. Conflict and control issues can arise within a relationship when person tries to be fair or tries to listen or put herself or himself in the other's shoes, leading to imbalance. Like other people may not want equality right now. So this attempt to connect, maybe conflict and control issues may arise. Scorpio, digging for the truth, understanding deep motivations in self and other. sensing and responding to underlying emotion and energetic issues. A sign of exploring power. Lilith here seeks transformation with others, seeks wrestling it out and like confronting, and whether physically, sexually, or emotional, like butting heads sometimes. Seeks transformation with others. Conflict and control issues can arise with money, sex, power, and also honesty and truth and transparency. Absolute honesty about desires, needs, and fears are imperative here. Sagittarius is a sign of expanding, risking, seeking, exploring things that are far away. It's also about imagination, right? So it's a sign of inhabiting belief and faith as well, or looking through the lens of imagination, or looking through the lens of possible scenarios and brainstorming. Lilith here seeks room to move and feel free to explore possibilities and imagine. Conflict and control issues can arise surrounding fears of or limits to expansiveness and growth. True Black Moon in Sagittarius just wants room to move. And so there can be some issues there about control. Like it's too much. Instinct needs to guide the mental framework. No artificial philosophies as part of this. As long as I'm telling personal stories today, I'll tell you that when I was a little kid, the only time that my dad spanked me, you're like, where is this going? The only time my dad spanked me, let me say that my True Black Moon Lilith is conjunct Mercury in Sagittarius. Words, expression, my arm motions, it's all wrapped up together with my Lilith. The need to be free in Sagittarius. And also it's in the second house, so tools are important. And the only time my dad ever spanked me was when, on a little chalkboard at his house, I wrote, I think 3 4-letter words I had heard him use. And he freaked out. He was a broadcaster. He'd majored in speech. He was very cognizant of, he was well known in the community for what he said. And he didn't want I think I was 6 or 7. He didn't want me using these swear words. And for me, it's natural. Lilith with Mercury, it's natural. In the second house, tools. I want to spell the word. And my mom's response, who's a very Lilith person, when he was exasperated and he said, can you believe he did this? My mom said, did he spell them correctly? Anyway, there's a nice Lilith story for you. So anyway, the need to expand, right? To be bigger than life, that kind of thing. Capricorn, structuring, organizing, building, maturing. It's a sign of manifestation and concretization. So Lilith here needs to instinctively figure out what responsibility means and what's worth building, and what face to put out to the world, right? What to be known for. A conflict and control issues can arise over authority and competency, where let's say that like person who is a team leader has a great idea, but it's a little counter to the status quo, Lilith. And everyone else in the team goes to the higher ups and says, this person's out of control. It's just a different idea, but they may feel threatened by the new idea, so they may challenge that person's authority and competency. It's just one example. Instinct needs to inform who's in charge of what, including the person relinquishing certain responsibilities to make sure he or she is available for more appropriate ones. Aquarius, it's a sign of being unique, separating from the herd, finding the original inner voice. It's a sign of individuation and creating freedom. Lilith here needs to take a step back from the status quo here more than in other signs. Really have an original sense of where things are headed. Conflict and control issues can arise over direction, goals, and individual freedom and choice. A planet Aquarius needs to individuate and be unique. I may have stirred others, fears of change and others' fears of not being able to control things by my crazy ideas. So people may have tried to control that. And then instinct needs to inform where all this is headed. A planet in Aquarius is cognizant of future goals. Now Pisces, merging, blending, surrendering. It's a sign of learning to go with the flow. So Lilith and Pisces may find the self merged with the diminishment of the feminine and trying to, in need of a swimming upstream. Like this person may feel the collective problem, right? Conflict and control issues can arise over what is and should be surrendered to. You should go with the flow. We're all eating meat. And the person goes, oh no, my body can't. I can't surrender to the flow, right? And so the instinctive thing really needs to be developed as far as like, what can I surrender to? Yeah, with what one is aligned is how I put it here. What am I aligned with? What am I connected to? What truth am I running? What energy am I running? What fuel, right? What fuel am I running my life with? Some examples, I just picked randomly 6 different ones to give you a sense of it. Since I'm not doing a lot of chart work here, I'm not taking your questions because this is pre-recorded. Third house in Pisces, again, houses and signs are not the same. Third house is about the information in and out and the education and the communication, right? Perception. Pisces is the need to do those things in a flowing, surrendered way. So true Black Moon Lilith in the third house, you can say, look, we have our math test tomorrow and we have to study, but the Lilith person with Pisces in the third will be drawn to something, you know, will be drawn to something else and may not want to focus on that thing because the Pisces thing says, I need to merge with this other thing. I need to flow enough to find this other truth. 7th house in Capricorn. 7th house is where, remember, this is not a quiz, but just remember, in the 7th house, person might not own Lilith energy, and so others might come in who are Lilith figures who activate this need to be autonomous, etc. So 7th house in Capricorn, this person needs to maturely respond to others being Lilith and respond in a healthy way. So if somebody comes in and says, I've decided to be the boss of you, then this Lilith person needs to realize, wait, instead of either feeling afraid I'm being controlled or upset that I'm being dominated, I need to own the authority to say, no, you're not. So control dynamics may come to the person has to rise up to be an authority figure to protect one's own autonomy. Okay, now first house in Taurus. First house, of course, person shows up, Lilith is there. Lilith is a loud influence in this person's life. The person is a Lilith person very directly. In Taurus, I need to go at my own speed. So I show up, I'm very obviously Lilith, but I do one thing at a time. That's a Taurus MO method. And I'm going to do it my own way. And I've just picked a position and I'm doing it. So this kind of looks bullheaded or stubborn, but it's really about knowing from a visceral place what I need. Second house in Sagittarius, that's actually mine, as I mentioned. Second house relating to how you use your time, energy, resources, and what your values are. And in, I didn't even realize when I typed that that's mine. I just randomly picked it. In Sagittarius, you need to be instinctively, you will be expansive about how you use certain things. Time, energy, money. And it's also about self-esteem and trusting yourself to gather skills that intuitively you are peaked toward, right? You are nudged towards certain things intuitively. That's a Sagittarius Lilith. 10th house in Leo, 10th house is that being seen from afar. 10th house, again, about ambition and how people see us in the world. In Leo, this person needs to be autonomous in what he or she does in the world and how he or she presents the self, but also needs to leave a personal mark on things and not be apologetic about being unique and having a voice, having style, having flair, right? It's a word we don't use very often since, anyway, flair. So 8th house in Libra. 8th house is that deep part of the chart that's about intimacy. And so Lilith is present in all trusting scenarios or trusted relationships where one has to be vulnerable and share a deeper truth. Well, in Libra, that's trying to create equality within that context of deep shared truth, trying to work things out, trying to negotiate, trying to understand the position of the other. And let me hear where you're coming from. Lilith instinctively will be able to do that there. All right, and then the last thing here is a note on natal aspects. I'm not going to cover them in detail here just because of time, but what conversations in the chart holder's psyche are involved with the need to honor instinct? Think about what you know, like squares bring pressure, trines boost and cheerlead, oppositions can block or have confrontations or challenge. But anyway, think about the quality of the other planet and the energy of Lilith as I'm talking about. Anyway, what conversations are happening? What kinds of external dynamics based in that energetic situation in the psyche come to the chart holder as opportunities to tap into and express instinct and autonomy? So Lilith square Saturn, just one example. Lilith square Saturn, the person's autonomous thing may be challenged or attempted to be constricted by authority figures. Well, inside that person has a question about it. So it's an internal thing that then manifests externally. So does my Saturn self, the person who's focused on productivity and responsibility, does that honor instinctive change and the need to be flowing and autonomous? Okay. None are good or bad, but present different ways of opening the person to Lilith's instinctive energy. So for more on Lilith from me and my unique take, the Black Moon Lilith Natal Report, these are all on my site. It goes through natal house, sign and aspects, and also transits and progressions to your true Black Moon for 5 years. Living in the Present Tense is another original natal report I've written. These are both mine. It goes through the house and sign of Pluto, Chiron, Lilith, and the asteroid Lucifer, which some of you may have been exposed to through some EA teachings. It's not a full natal report where aspects and all these and transits and whatever, but the house and sign, there are essays and then sections on that. And I've organized that as a healing course because there are questions for reflection after each of the 8 sections. So it helps you get into the archetype and how you live it. And of course, Lilith Healing the Wild book on Kindle, Amazon, and also tdjacobs.com. And Living Myth, Exploring Archetypal Journeys has either 3 or 4 chapters on Lilith. The first things I wrote about Lilith really in 2007 and 8, in the context of like working with 11 archetypes, one of them is Lilith. So anyway, thank you for your time and energy, and check out everything I'm up to, including all the Lilith stuff at tdjacobs.com. Take care.